Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar. The session for today is called Finding the Market Gap. My name is Sonia Kabra, and I'm one of the founders of Magic Bus. Now we are called PUPAS, and we were the Hult Prize winners in 2016. In this session, I would be talking about the power of building domain knowledge, especially the domain knowledge of the problem you're trying to solve, and also the importance of getting feedback from stakeholders and experts in the field and how that needs to be a continuous process. I would be talking about how you would be getting feedback and how you can collect your feedback, which basically would be allowing you to back your idea with data, and also the ways you can do research to improve your domain knowledge. I would also be talking about how different stakeholders, starting from the end user to the different people in the ecosystem of the issue you're trying to solve, can be great advisors. By the end of the session, you would have different ways of recording data. You would have ways of identifying strategic advisors, and also techniques to understand your users more. So I'm Sonia, and I'm the one who leads the product department at PUPAS. Right now at PUPAS, I am the product officer. I am the one who makes sure that the user experience, so the needs of the users, the business goals, and the technology development are aligned. I would like to mention that my major at Earlham College, which was biochemistry, helped me give me a strong knowledge on why data-driven decisions are important and what are the different ways you can set up experiments to prove your hypotheses. And I think a lot of you might come from technical backgrounds, and even though you're getting into a business which is completely unrelated to the major you're doing, there's still a lot of transferable skills that can go from one educational field to what you are choosing as your career. So even when we were doing our pilot, I was the one who was responsible for setting up. So as I was saying, you might come from different educational backgrounds, and regardless of what your major is and what entrepreneurial sector you are getting into, there are a lot of transferable skills from what you have learned in your degree to how you would be solving your problem. And my example would be that my skills with data and setting up experiments or pilots to test hypotheses very useful for my team as we moved on, especially before the Hult Prize. So before I start giving you tips, this is one thing to consider and keep in mind is that all of the tips I'm giving you come from personal experience as somebody who just graduated from college and wanted to start a company. So the first thing that comes to your mind when you have an idea is it viable enough? Maybe in your mind, you have this really amazing idea and it might be the next game changer in the energy sector. Or maybe you're unsure, but you still want to try it out and see how people respond to it. Or you don't have a clear idea, but you want to innovate in a certain vertical, and you want to gain more knowledge about that sector first before you come up with a solution for it. Regardless of wherever you are, one of the things that would help you gain more clarity of where you are going towards is research and data. So a lot of the decisions, especially as co-founders, you would be making might not be backed by data, but would be either guessing or emotions or your gut. But it's always good to have data as something that backs your decision, because that's when you have validation of whatever decision or solution you're trying to provide. So now that you need to do research and get data, where should you start? Because there's so much stuff out there, especially with the availability of internet and a lot of people having different opinions, especially in the energy sector. Where should you start? I would say what we did was we defined the fields of intersection for the idea and how different sectors are affected by it. So for us, for example, we knew that we wanted to tackle transport, and we wanted to optimize transport. A way for optimizing transport would be technology. So the fields of intersection for us were transport, then travel, basically the travel behavior of the users, and how technology can solve it. And we realized that the areas it can affect is urban planning and environmental health. So after we were able to do that, what we did was we read a lot of literature and articles and any kind of research that is done in your field of interest. So it shouldn't, I mean, it can start from like a lot of the research done by the World Bank or the UN or any other organization, to blogs and the news that talk about your the field of interest. You should look into primary and secondary sources. For us, we even looked into blogs that were written by commuters and bus drivers and conductors to get a better understanding of how the situation is on the ground. Then what we did was, after we read all of this literature and what are the different perspectives on it, a lot of times a lot of PhD students have theses that are published which might tackle the very problem you are trying to solve. We try to get in touch with all of these different experts. So for us, because we were in transport and we wanted to innovate in East Africa, we looked at what is the different research done here. And one of them was called digital matatus. So matatus are buses in Swahili, and a researcher from a professor from MIT led research which collected different data points on matatu routes and stops. So we tried to get in touch with her. We sent her a cold email. We tried to call her, and basically what we did was we tried to get to know more about the project, how was our experience on the ground, and get feedback on what our solution. We even got in touch with a bus driver who turned into a blogger in Kenya, and he gave us great insight. Actually, we quoted him during our regionals, and that impressed a few of the judges because they liked that we not only got feedback from experts who are PhD holders or professors or tech entrepreneurs, but also who are a part of the ecosystem that you are trying to get into. So I would like you to pause and brainstorm with your team. So you should define the fields of intersections for your idea. So if you are trying to do something with solar panels, you should see what are the different fields of intersections here. What are the different ways off-grid technology has been used in different places, and what are the other sectors that are affected? What are the spillover effects of the same? And then you can use Google Scholar or just Google some literature about it. And if you can find the contacts of people who have written that, just send them an email and try to get feedback. Set an appointment with them, try to get to know them and get feedback on your idea. From my personal experience, just asking to get feedback from experts, most of them never say no. They might just say that they don't have time right now, just contact them later. But even if they say no, you tried. So I think it's getting feedback helps you refine your idea even more. So after we did our research on the different fields and built our domain knowledge, and this is not something that has stopped. Even now, we keep on reading a lot of literature, case studies, blogs, and stuff out there that relate to transport and technology. So this is an ongoing process. What we did next was we started conducting user research. So it's important to do user research now because you have you've spent significant time researching on the topic and probably understand it more deeply than an average person. So your view of the problem at hand is now biased, and this is the reason why you need to go out there and get input from users to ensure that you're solving a real problem and not just the one in your head. So there are different ways you can do user research. And I would give you different techniques we used to do user research for Bupas. The first technique is you can find 5 people who are in. So this is a simple method to get a feel of whether your idea is worthwhile. All you need to do is find 5 people who say they would be keen to use your product, in quotes, if it's a hypothetical product, you have not built it yet. And while it doesn't necessarily guarantee that the problem actually exists or that your proposed solution is good or valuable, it's the simplest way to begin validating the problem you have identified. So just find 5 people, and it's even better if those 5 people are actually your end users. But it could be any like 5 average, just 5 of your friends, or bounce your idea off your family, or just create this group of 5 people or more that you can get feedback from. So that's a good first step to just start refining your ideas. The second one you can do is user interviews. So you have to sit down and start interviewing people. You'll likely learn a lot about both your problem and your users. The focus is to understand the motivations and needs of each potential user you talk to, and to use that feedback to improve the product. Ideally, you will want to have both an interviewer and an observer present during the interview, so that the answers you get or the feedback you give back to the team is not biased. While the interviewer communicates with the user, the observer would take notes. Also, a fruitful interview includes encouraging participants to share their past experiences as well as their current needs and challenges, and ask them how they have tried to solve the particular problem in the past and what was the outcome. Talking about this from a personal point of view allows participants to reveal their feelings, which would give you better insight into the motivations and help you understand their needs and build empathy for the users. One thing you should avoid is asking people what they want. It is often difficult for people to share exactly what they want, especially if they don't know what they want. And it's easier for them to tell you what they're trying to achieve and for you to ask about their motivations behind this. Getting this information enables you to see whether your product idea addresses that particular need, or whether you need to tweak it or completely change it, or you should change the focus of your product. And avoid asking suggestive questions. These are questions that are just have a lot of assumptions about the market. So keep the questions unbiased and open-ended. So instead of saying how easy was it, or like if you were to use my product, how easy would it be to get your bus? Say, what's your impression of using my product? So it needs to be very unbiased. That means, which will give you much better data. The third technique you can use is ethnography research. So what you can do here is you'll take the role and travel to the living environment of your users. So us, for example, what we did every day was we would take a bus, for any kind of transport inside the city of Nairobi, we would use a bus. And we would try to, especially we selected a particular route where we would take a lot of buses, get out at different stops and observe the users and also ask them questions. This is great for observing and inquiring about the behavior of your users, and their motivation and their cognition. And it would also give you insight into the context, which can be hard to get from like other more formal testing techniques. So this is recommended before you do any kind of a pilot project. Just getting out there and observing the environment, trying to understand the intricacies of the problems you're trying to solve and looking at it from different perspectives. Learning more about this context helps to understand how it affects the user. And the key here is to be very observant and capture any kind of aha moments where you're discovering user motivations. So you basically, I think even before doing that, you would need to know where does your ideal user stay and what is the environment they are in. For us, it was easy because we were tackling transport. Our users were the commuters, and we would go to the bus stops. But it might be difficult for other kind of products. So if you have issues, trying to find that out, or with any of the techniques I mentioned before, you can contact me, and I can give you feedback. So the fourth technique, and the most popular one, which a lot of you might have done already, are surveys. Surveys are one of the easiest research tools, but also very misleading. I'm not saying that you should not do it; they're very recommended. But it's better to do surveys with one of the other techniques that I mentioned before, because for surveys the conversation is one-sided, and you don't want to have an ongoing dialogue with your users. Instead, you are sending out a set of pre-written questions and hoping they responded the right way. And it's hard to look into the tone and sentiment and into the way the user is thinking, unless the surveys are very, multiple choice or objective. They're very quantitative. Surveys are great for quantitative data collection, and they are focused more on the quantity of responses rather than the quality, which is the user thinking. So this means they're a great tool to validate the size of the market, but they can easily lead you astray in the early stage of the project. If you are at the very beginning of your product validation journey, you should avoid validating the problem using surveys alone. You need to, get up close and personal with your users. So for surveys, you can use different tools to create surveys. My favorite one is Google Forms, but you can also use SurveyMonkey, or you can just go out and have volunteers and print out surveys as well. You can have paper surveys. Sometimes you might need to put some incentives to do surveys. You can quickly put together a few questions. The shorter the surveys, the better, because it's shown that if the survey is very long, the user might just lose interest. So you can have set up multiple surveys, but they're short and quick to get you better responses. And so that's the last technique which you can use to do user research. What we did at Bhupas, or this was MagicBus. That's on the left. There's one of our volunteers who actually did who was wearing the MagicBus T-shirt, and she did a focus group with stakeholders. So we called them in maybe for tea, or had some kind of an incentive. And there were bus owners, and we had a different group for drivers and conductors, and we asked them certain questions that helped us look into the different pain points they have. We also did commuter interviews at different bus stops, and then we did online and SMS surveys. We used Facebook, Twitter, and then also we had collected a lot of numbers during commuter interviews, so we sent them a set of surveys using SMS as well. For the SMS and online surveys, we had to give out incentives too. So it could be, something like you give out 100 rupees of airtime or something like that, and that would make them take the surveys even more. So my second task for you is to get out there. You should find, 5 users who would be using your hypothetical product, and then try to get feedback from them. Try to get the first impression of the idea you tell them, and try to get their first impression and see how do they respond to it. What we are trying to do, and what you can already do, is set up a board of customers. So whenever you have a new idea, you're like, hey, why don't we add this additional feature to our product? You can always ask them. The board of customers are great for choosing your company name or your branding and stuff like that, so that it really resonates with the users you're trying to target. And maybe you can put out a survey on social media. What I did was I put out a survey on my Facebook just to see what are the different pain points people have while traveling in buses, regardless of wherever they are, anywhere like India, USA, Korea, Kenya. My friends from everywhere, they gave me a lot of insight on what different problems they have. So you can put out a very general survey on the kind of problem you're trying to solve and what are the different pain points users have. So I think I hope this short presentation was useful. There are 3 main takeaways. The first one is making data your best friend. Collect as much data as you can about your users, both qualitative and quantitative, and make sure that that data helps you make decisions about your product, about your strategy. And always keep on researching and gathering feedback from your advisors, from the different stakeholders, and from your users as well. And the third one is that you have to understand your user. You have to get up close and personal and understand your user and their motivations. So you can get in touch with me. I have my email or on WhatsApp I can answer. Feel free to ask me any questions you have about this presentation, or if you want to just bounce your ideas. If you shoot me a message, I should be available in a few days or so. Thank you.